So this is the third in a series that we're doing on something called the Call of Life. And if you missed other ones, if you look at the chair in front of you, little red cards will tell you where to get the other ones. You can either listen to them on a podcast or watch them on YouTube, just the messages. And if you want to be on our mailing list, the blue card is just in front of you there, and there's a pencil for you to use as well. And in this third series on the Call of Life, we're looking at how life is calling us to respond. And we're looking at those words from Micah 6:8. And it says, "And what does the Lord require of you?" What it's saying, what does life require of you? And the answer is, in Micah, to act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And in the first week, we looked at the importance of listening from our hearts to find the wisdom of the heart, because it's out of the wisdom of the heart that really we should be responding to life. Heather, my wife, mentioned the idea of the divine capacities. We all have these divine capacities, that which I think characterizes us as being human. What makes us human is these divine capacities, or at least the spiritual, that makes us spiritual beings trying to be human. Divine capacities are things like peace and joy and love, charity, patience, kindness, goodness, generosity, gentleness. You get the idea. I mean, these are divine capacities. They define our humanity. They make us, I think, human rather than animal. Because, animals have emotions, and to some degree they have rationality. You can even see a dog having shame. But as humans, we're able to self-reflect. And our self-reflection enables us to arrive at an understanding that there is a life force within us, a spark that not only gives us life, but with which we can identify and grow in awareness of that spark, and therefore take on some of its attributes. And really, this is the practice of spirituality, the cultivation of a sensitive and rewarding relationship with eternal truth and love. That's a definition we use here for spirituality. The cultivation of a sensitive and rewarding relationship with eternal truth and love. And that produces these divine capacities. The capacity to love, to be at peace, to experience joy, and the rest. And although these do naturally occur within us, the development of our spirituality, that relationship with the divine spark within us, immeasurably increases our ability to develop these capacities. And last week we looked at not only having these divine capacities, but out of this we can do what life is calling us to do. We can have right judgment, which is really what justice is, the idea of judging things from the right perspective. To love mercy and to walk humbly with our God. But none of this works, I don't think, unless we recognize our place within the reality of things. Last week we talked about justice, and often we want justice in relationship to man's laws, the laws that exist that we put in place. But really, justice is right judgment based upon the nature of reality. And so we have to recognize that nature of reality in order to be able to respond in an appropriate way. We have to recognize our intimate interconnectedness, to recognize that we do share one consciousness, that we're all brothers and sisters of the same divine family, and that right living and therefore clear thinking and right judgment come out of this understanding. So I think, in a way, the problems of the world, just to talk grandly for a moment, the problems of the world are rooted in education. It's our education that tells us how we behave in a civilized manner. we learn not to be mean, not to hit others, and to respect difference. That's a standard in most countries. And the problem is that standard tends to fall down whenever things get incredibly difficult. And in order to move beyond that, in order to have a capacity to be able to deal with that incredible difficulty, it requires, I think, a greater level of education. It means that we have to go deeper into learning. There's more to learn. And it seems that it's only, I think, in the spiritual realm, and to some extent in the scientific realm, that more is taught. You have your standard moralities, but when you really get into the spiritual realm, and I think in the scientific realm, then you can find out what that more is. I used to do a course here called Developing Consciousness, and I had an elevator pitch for that. Who knows what an elevator pitch is? Yeah, there we are. An elevator pitch is what you use when you're going up in an elevator with a senior executive, and you only have the time it takes to get from the ground floor to the 12th floor to pitch to that senior executive what it is you want to do. And that's why it's called an elevator pitch. And my elevator pitch for the Developing Consciousness course was, we can only understand things that we're conscious of. Dogs hear more. Cats see more, so it makes sense that there is more. This 8-week course is about what that more might be. So the reason that education is really at the root of it all is that people can only operate at the level that they can perceive at. If they're not seeing what that more might be, they can't operate out of that level of it being more. If they perceive life as just being a whole load of separate entities that are competing with each other for a finite amount of resources, which is what, let's face it, most of the world does think of it like that, a whole load of separate entities competing for what's there, then they'll fight with all the might they've got to get the resources that they can. And they'll defend themselves from attacks from people who think that they're going to steal their resources. But if they perceive that we're all part of one conscious whole, one large consciousness, if we're just a part of that, and that each part of that whole is interconnected, which is what both spirituality and science posit, then the attitude would be different. And at the chapel, we're about creating a context for that education. And, that's not something you can tell people. You can't tell people, oh, you're all part of one big whole. It has to be, in the Latin words, educare. It has to be, and that really means, educare means to lead, E is out. So you can only really educate people, educare. You can only lead out the understanding that is already there within them. Education is about drawing out an understanding that is deep within us all. We all contain those divine capacities. They just have to be drawn out of us. Which is why when you get on the spiritual path and you start talking about spiritual truth, I don't know about you, but there's always that feeling that you knew it all the time. Oh yeah, of course I knew that. Yes, of course, because you do. When you go to some really great teacher and they say, oh, it is all about this. And you go, yeah, of course. You recognize it rather than, learn it in your head. You recognize the truth that was there. But you just didn't realize it before you knew it. Somehow it was educared out of you. It was led out of you by some circumstance or inspiration. I always think our role here is to provide the inspiration for each other. And in so doing, provide the inspiration for those around us. And it is through this type of education that we begin to realize the true nature of reality, and therefore we act in a way that conforms to it. And that is always in a loving way. When you come from that reality, it is always in a loving way. So here we are in the business of education, of enabling people to have right judgment, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. Or as Jesus always said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That is an educated response. That's another way of saying those things. Which neatly brings us to the concept of loving mercy. We did act justly last week, and we're doing sort of loving mercy this week. To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. I had to go downstairs to the Jewish community, Jewish congregation, to find out some of the meanings of this. I went to Seema, the rabbi, and I burst into her office, and I'm sure she thought I was going to ask her about something to do with moving chairs and all that. So I said, look, can you tell me the Hebrew root of this word? She was totally stunned that I was wanting to know that. But I looked at the Hebrew root of the word mercy. When you look at it the only thing I can use is Strong's Concordance, which is where you find these things out. And it wasn't good enough, so I thought, we've got Jewish people here, they can tell me what it is. So the word for mercy is hesed, which literally means kindness. So the translation in the Old Testament for the word mercy literally means kindness. And Sim was telling me that in modern Hebrew, you use hesed when you are kind to widows and orphans, when you look after someone in trouble. It is the concept of loving kindness. It's a bit like the Buddhist concept of metta, again, loving kindness, which implies, and metta implies acting with compassion towards all sentient beings, with an awareness and appreciation of the natural world. I think it's a lovely idea of mercy. To act with compassion towards all sentient beings, with an awareness and appreciation of the natural world. And of course, kindness, and the word kind comes from the root, anyone know? Kin. That's where it comes from. And kin, of course, denotes family. Kith and kin. He is my kin. And the word kind comes from family. So this idea of loving mercy, of loving kindness, is really, again, a description of the family that is all creation. It is pointing us to this, having loving kindness towards all things is our relationship with all things is one of family with the world around us. It's a nod to that unity of consciousness that enables us to have right judgment and to practice loving kindness in the world around us. You can't possibly practice loving kindness, acting with compassion towards all sentient beings, unless you've arrived at a point in your understanding, at a point in your education, where you know that you are deeply related to all sentient beings. You are intimately connected with them, and therefore they are as much a part as you are a part of them. It's only when you've reached that level of understanding that we'll be able to deal with some of the great crises that confronts humanity. Things like war and climate change, poverty and refugees. For me, my hand is a part of me. And I know that, easy. But for me to know Andy is a part of me is that switch. That we have that intimate relationship. We are kin with all of it. And we have to act as kin. So the idea of mercy, of loving mercy, is really embracing the concept of loving kindness, which is to see the world as kin, as family, and acting accordingly. Which is where those words that Louisa read come in. The ancient Buddhas taught the Dharma not for its own sake, but to assist us. And I love that. That really is our creed here, is that we're here to learn how to live life more skillfully. We're not here to study the Bible or study the Torah. We're not here for the sake of that. No, we're here for what it produces, to be able to live life more skillfully. We don't study these texts for the sake of study. We do it to draw out from ourselves that understanding that is latent within us. If we really knew ourselves, if we were educated, we would not have to rely on old teachers. The wise go right to the core and leap beyond appearances. The foolish cleave to details and get ensnared by words and letters. Such people envy the accomplishments of others and work feverishly to attain the same things. A true understanding of the world means we don't have to rely on our teachers. We can go beyond the world of appearances, and we individually can see into the nature of things if we don't get too caught up in it all. Cling to the truth and it becomes falsehood. You see so much of that in religion. Cling to the truth and it becomes falsehood. Understand falsehood and it becomes truth. Truth and falsehood are two sides of the coin. Neither accept or reject either one. Don't waste your precious time fruitlessly trying to gauge the depths of life's ups and downs. Life's not an up or a down or a this or a that or a one side or another. Life is a whole that has to be understood as a whole. And when you do that, then loving kindness naturally arises.
Thank you, you guys. I really appreciate that no one clapped. I just think that's so nice sometimes. It speaks a lot to the presence, I feel like. So thank you. So what does the Lord require of us? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. So I just want to add here some personal reflections and some impressions about this word mercy. To me, it's such a beautiful word. The whole subject of mercy is immense. It makes me think of that line in Psalm 139, which I think, by the way, is a whole articulation of mercy, that whole psalm. But the line that says that such knowledge is too lofty and too wonderful to attain. There's something about mercy that's just too much for us to wrap our beings around, really. And that's how I feel, really, as we approach this word mercy, kind of humbled and awestruck. That perhaps it's not something we're necessarily meant to conceptualize or really comprehend, but rather it's simply a truth that we can just get the slightest hint about, and a reality that we can begin to live inside of. I sometimes feel that mercy is so unbelievably and overwhelmingly good that it's actually somehow offensive and humiliating to our egos. So as we ponder this word together, let's just consider that maybe mercy is something we can just feel into in the depths of our hearts and realize that sometimes the best we can do is intuit truths, lean into what resonates deeply within us, allow our hearts to be moved, allow our hearts to join with other hearts, like here in this room, but also with the hearts of people throughout throughout the ages in all corners of the world who've also been leaning into such truths. So I hope that today we can experience this word mercy or loving kindness as an invitation, a portal or a window to a deeper kind of knowing and loving. My first impression of mercy really is it's an image or an atmosphere that I've had all my life. As I've gone through my life, I realize that I associate this image I'm going to share with the moment of death. Like, this is kind of how I imagine my death or death. It's that sense of utter and absolute compassion, forgiveness, and welcome that will meet us when we leave these physical bodies. that whatever, literally, whatever has happened to us in our lives, whatever we've done or not done, with no exceptions, that when we die, we're met and received in the most all-encompassing, perfect, gentle, complete love. An absolute embrace. I think of that line in Deuteronomy, I think in chapter 33, that says, "The eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms." And that line speaks so much, I think, to that absolute, steadfast, enduring, reliable, dependable, honorable, unbreakable love. That's, I think, what we're talking about, this word mercy. And the image I have in my mind's eye is of a 5-year-old kid seeing their beloved grandfather, like just imagine the most loving grandfather off in the distance. And they haven't seen each other for a while. And they spot each other. And the grandfather bends down on one knee with his arms outstretched. And the kid runs with all his might and all the joy in the world and jumps into his grandfather's arms. And the grandfather embraces him and spins him around. This is my image of death somehow, like the most glorious homecoming. I mean, can you feel that absolute, unquestioning reception and acceptance by the divine of each one of us, of every human that has ever existed, of all beings? The thing is that even as I say all of this, I can hear a certain mental, calculative quibble creep in, and in me too, with all the argumentative, hang on, what about that person, or what about that thing that I did? All the hang on buts. And this is the trouble. This is the deep suffering of the human condition. The concept of mercy offends our egos. It's too much. And so that self-deprecating or self-enhancing, scheming, discriminating mind that we talked about last week creeps in. A consciousness that seeks to include or exclude, embrace or condemn, welcome in or reject. And all of this begins to take the upper hand. This kind of mental goings-on has more to do with our deep-seated need for safety and security and control. And this has been the story of humanity down the ages. And we can see how this kind of mindset, this kind of thinking and operating is playing out in the world now. So this is the thing. The concept of mercy, loving kindness, is too much for us. It's literally too good to be true. Our frames can't cope with it. And so we settle for something less. But something in us knows it. Every so often, our hearts are quickened by a love that tells us that it's so, that there's more. It makes me think of just another image of sitting in a beautiful room with the sun streaming in through the window. It's completely idyllic and exquisite, and the light shining in blinds you. The rays of sunshine are beautiful, and you're undone by it, but it hurts your eyes. You can't look at the light. It hurts to look at the light. So you look down and you close your eyes and allow yourself to just bathe in the warm sunlight. I think this is how it is with mercy. We could think of spiritual practice that way, that it's like sitting, bathing in that warm, gentle light and allowing mercy to infiltrate our beings. Which brings me to this next point of what are we to do? Once we've intuited something of mercy, the question is, can I trust it? Can I depend on it? Can I base my life on it? A love that is so completely not transactional, so completely unconditional. Can I dare to? Can I edge towards it? I feel like most of us will go through our lives. We go through our lives like this, edging towards that love and then backing off, edging towards it and backing off. And that will have been an amazing way to have lived our lives, to live inside of the reality that mercy is both our context. If we could get that mercy is our context and our destination. I think of the end of Psalm 23. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This was a deep intuition that psalmist David had all those centuries ago. And here we are again, all this time later, echoing the same words and leaning into the same intuition in the actuality and particularity of this time and place, along with no doubt millions of others around the world right now doing the same. And I think of Jesus saying in that beatitude, "Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful." Well, that's a pretty clear instruction to me. Be merciful. And so we must simply find ways of immersing ourselves in mercy. I remember once Franciscan priest Richard Rohr using the analogy of a pristine mountain spring. Just imagine it, this mountain spring with perfectly clear water. And I remember him doing this, of just like cupping our hands under this water and receiving it, receiving mercy. I really love that image of just receiving mercy and giving it, receiving it and giving it. You could even imagine like cupping your hands and the water spilling over and then drinking it and just like allowing mercy to just take over. So as we were saying last week, and this is where I want to end here, I think there's a deeper way of being, a deeper way of showing up in the world. We are each called now more than ever to live out of this deeper consciousness. In a way, it's a whole paradigm shift. How easy it is for us to get caught up in the drama of our lives and of the world, and to add to the cacophony of noise, the judgment, the hurt, the unforgiveness, the mayhem. But amidst all this noise, there's a quiet voice, a quiet, gentle, inviting, beckoning voice. Be merciful. There's a part of us that gets caught up in the anger and upset of the world. And there's another part of us, the God in us, you could say, that does not want to join in with all the noise. There's a part of us that is vast and silent and restful and peace-loving. And all it takes is to just get that tiniest inkling of mercy inside us, and then to give our wills a willingness rather than a willfulness. Simply a willingness to be merciful. And so we surrender to it 1,000 times. Really a lifetime of receiving forgiveness. A lifetime of receiving forgiveness allows us then to become mercy. We become what we receive. And mercy then becomes like the purposive energy in our lives and in the world. So that's all. I mean, I'm kind of like undone. I'm on the verge of tears, so I might just stop. But, it's amazing.